So yes, it may seem that Sony overpaid for Bungie. We just found out that Sony purchased Bungie for $3.6 billion. But there was a reason they spent that much money, Mike. I just found it out too, but it makes sense. Let's get into it.
Skip it up and that up.
So just a few days ago, we found out that Sony was purchasing Bungie. They are the developers behind Destiny 2. They used to be under Microsoft's umbrella. They created Halo. It's a small little franchise you may have heard of before. And Sony spent, which is nothing compared to what Microsoft spent on Activision Blizzard, an eye-watering $3.6 billion. Keep in mind, Microsoft spent $68.7 billion on Activision Blizzard, but that's money you and I will probably never see in our lifetimes. And even if we did, you can't compute how much money that is. Now, many people might be wondering, including me, what the hell did they spend $3.6 billion on? Yes, the Destiny series is wildly successful, but it's just Destiny at this point with Bungie. Well, one thing I will say, keep this in mind, is that Destiny 2 has an enormous player base. According to ProGameGuides.com, Destiny 2 is estimated to have a player base of 38.8 million players. That's why Sony spent the money they did. It is the second most popular MMO of all time. Second to only World of Warcraft. It also boasts a respectable average of around 700,000 daily users. For a game released in 2017, Destiny 2 continues to perform extremely well. But even with all that, even with the concurrent player base, even with the talent that's at Bungie, you still may think that price tag is too high, and so did Michael Pachter. But like I said, there's a reason why they spent that much money. Maybe it is overvalued, but Sony knew what they were doing. Anyway, take a listen to what Michael Pachter had to say, and then we'll discuss.
And Sony, I think, just did a Me Too statement and said, we're not going to be left behind, so we'll buy Bungie. The Activision deal and the Zynga deal were both done below those stocks' recent highs. So Activision had traded over 100, and the deal was at 95. Back in October, it was at over 100. Zynga had traded over 11, I believe, and the deal was done at 986. So, they didn't really overpay either of the acquirers. Bungie went for $4 million per developer. And most deals are between 250,000 and $1 million. I've seen deals as close, as high as $2 million per developer. This is crazy talk. And just to compare and contrast, EA bought Respawn about 3 or 4 years ago for $700 million with 400 developers, and those guys generate $700 million a year in revenue. Bungie does about $200 million in revenue. So I think Sony vastly overpaid. I think this was a statement that we're not going to let Microsoft get ahead of us, so we'll just buy something out of desperation. It's not really a deal that makes a whole lot of sense to me. The others do.
So there have been many times I've disagreed with Michael Pachter and have agreed with Michael Pachter. I think he's a nice guy. I know there's a lot of people in the industry who feel otherwise. I don't feel the same way. On a surface level, he's 110% correct. I was like, man, that's a lot. I mean, I know Destiny is successful. I know it's a huge revenue stream for Bungie, but right now, at least for now, and I'm sure, look, there's the other argument can be made, Rich, they're probably working on other projects behind the scenes that Sony was like, cha-ching, we want in on this. Maybe that's why too. And I'm sure Michael Pachter realized this. He's an analyst in the industry, but there's probably other projects that they're working on behind the scenes that Sony was like, yeah, right now, you're overvalued, but we're going to be making a ton of cash with this. But there's another reason that we found out. Here's why, Mike. Here is why they paid so much for Bungie. They wanted to keep the talent there. They didn't want them to go somewhere else. So they're giving them financial incentives. So I guess it was in Sony's mindset, like, yeah, we'll overpay now to reap the benefits by keeping the talent and getting the other projects that Bungie's working on in the future, and we can recoup that way. Anyway, here's what Kotaku had to say about this. When Sony revealed its surprise $3.6 billion deal to buy Bungie, it was clear the PS5 manufacturer was paying a premium for the original creators of Halo and now Destiny 2. Now the company has revealed roughly a third of that price tag is actually just to pay Bungie developers so they don't immediately leave the studio. Approximately 1/3 of the $3.6 billion acquisition consideration consists primarily of deferred payments to employee shareholders conditional upon their continued employment and other retention incentives. Sony announced in Wednesday's earnings presentation, as first reported by Tweaktown, the approximately $1.2 billion will be paid out over several years. They don't want to give him just a cash bonus up front because many people would probably just take that and walk out the door, with an estimated 2/3 to be paid within the first 2 years following the acquisition's official closing date. Sony is paying for people as much as for Destiny 2, which makes sense. Because here is the thing, a company is only as good as the talent that works for it. I think a lot of people, and even corporations, forget that. Like, oh, we own the Carlos development company. This is a bird, okay? If Carlos is no longer there and then we have a new bird, but you don't even know if this bird is talented, look, here's a new bird. The other Carlos is gone, okay? Even though it's the same company, if a different bird is working there with less talent, who cares that you own the company? The talent is gone. You just own a shell of the company. You're not as good of a bird. You're not. So Sony realized, look, there's probably a lot of people that may not want to work under us and they may walk out the door or do whatever. We need those people, though. They are the people that made Destiny 2 what Destiny 2 is. And they may be the people working on these other secret projects, which probably entice Sony to purchase Bungie, that we need them working on them. We can't have less talented people come in, because what the hell is the point of the acquisition then? So if you think about it, if they didn't do this retention investment where like a third of it, which is $1.2 billion, was put towards keeping the talent, it would have been a deal of $2.4 billion, which would have made more sense. Sony realized, though, yeah, we'll overpay now to keep the talent and we'll make the return in the future, especially because Sony seems hell-bent on keeping Bungie games multi-platform. To them, it was worth the financial hit they would take initially to what many people, understandably, I get why Michael Pachter's saying this, that the valuation of Bungie was overpriced because they know the payoff in the future will be worthwhile. And they wanted to pay to keep the talent, to keep Bungie actually being Bungie, not just purchase the name of Bungie and not have the talent behind it. Because if the people aren't there, you only own the name and the company isn't the company that you purchased. So I think that was a smart move for Sony. They realized that they needed the people there to make the games they want them to make. And if they left, what the hell was the point of buying Bungie? So yeah, it was overvalued, but it was overvalued for a reason. No company spends money if they don't think they're going to get a return on it. I'm sure Sony knew what they were doing. This is Rich of Review Tech USA signing out. Have a good one.